The price of Bitcoin has nearly doubled in just a few short months this year. I'm going to tell you what every Bitcoin and every cryptocurrency investor needs to do right now before prices go higher. All across the Bitcoin universe, we're seeing articles that the price could go even higher. Bitcoin could be ready for a breakout. We are on a rebound to a new all-time high. People are talking about this, not only with Bitcoin, but with all different cryptocurrencies. We've seen tremendous momentum so far in 2023. So I'm not a technical analyst, I'm not a prognosticator, but what I am saying is if you're holding an asset, you're probably expecting it to go up. And you've seen great progress on that so far this year. So I want to tell you what to do to make sure you maximize those gains, because I see a lot of people getting it wrong. And this can apply to anybody who owns a growth stock, any kind of stock that's gone up and shot through the roof recently, any kind of asset you own that has tremendous capital gains potential, you need to listen to this. Now, the first thing I want you to do is figure out what's your actual cost basis on that Bitcoin. Because if you bought it on January 1st, you got in around $16,000, and now you've almost doubled your money. So you've got that unrealized capital gain. If you bought it back, let's say, when we were buying it as part of our treasury management that puts some of our money in things like Bitcoin, then we bought some at $28,000, we bought some at $32,000. Our average is probably somewhere in the high 20s or around $30,000. And so if Bitcoin comes back to $30,000, as it did touch that number, we are basically back to even. Those are two different situations. What I want you to understand, and I think people who invest in Bitcoin and cryptos understand this as well as anybody, you want to keep as much of your money from capital gains as possible. And if you live in a jurisdiction that taxes those gains, then your best way to keep most of that money, to keep it growing for you and to maximize it if you eventually cash out or use some of that money to buy other stuff, is to live in a place where they tax it less or not at all. If you live in a place like Germany, you've had an advantage. But I think those kind of advantages specifically for crypto in Western countries are not going to last forever, because we see politicians in Western countries calling and saying, let's get rid of tax advantages. The US, Australia, Canada, countries like these are saying we're going after enforcement on crypto. We have all kinds of new ways to see who owns various cryptocurrencies, and we're going to find you and we're going to make sure that you pay. And those tax rates are going up. Tax rates in the West are going up. So if I own an asset that has been going up, I want to figure out, do I want to continue living in my country and deal with whatever the tax rate is whenever I want to sell? And keep in mind, you may say, I'm never going to sell, but they're also working on, as we've been telling you, strategies to say, if you just borrow against it, they're going to count that. They may tax you on unrealized capital gains. How's that going to work? I don't know, but when do politicians let that get in the way? They have all kinds of strategies to say, oh, okay, he traded his Bitcoin for a house, so we're going to go after that. Whether you sell, whether you borrow, whether you swap, whether you do whatever, they want to make sure they tax you on every single thing that you do. And so if you ever want to put any of your money to use, you need to make sure you're in a country that follows your values in terms of how much of your money you should be allowed to keep. So if you're the guy who bought $30,000 and now you're right back at $30,000, then you're not in bad shape as long as you move quickly. Nomad Capitalist, for example, helps people relocate to other countries, doing it legally, exiting their country, and then entering the new country. And so what a lot of countries will have is an exit tax. If you are an American, this is going to mean that when you renounce your US citizenship, they will impose an exit tax. That's why a lot of Americans who own cryptocurrencies moved to Puerto Rico instead, because they can keep their US citizenship. They have to live in Puerto Rico, but they've got special rules to let them keep those capital gains. That may not last forever, but that was one way that they could say, hey, I'll make some money, maybe I'll live here for 5 years, and then I'll cash out and I'll go back and live in the US because I don't want to give up the citizenship. You can also choose to get a second passport and give up US citizenship, and we've helped people do that as well. Then you're out of the system, you can live wherever you want. If you're not an American, if you're Canadian, Australian, Dutch, whatever, all you need to do is leave your country's tax system. But again, there may be an exit tax. And so if you bought at 30 and now it's worth at 30, let's set aside any other assets you own, your business that may have gone up in value on paper, your stocks, whatever you may have, may also be subject to an exit tax. If your crypto is just even, you're going to leave and say, hey, I really haven't made any money in your system. However, if you're the person who bought the dip at 16,000 and now it's 30, well, they're going to say, great, that profit of $14,000 per Bitcoin, and this would apply to really most assets, every country's a little different, but that profit of $14,000, whether you sell or not, they're going to say, in order for you to leave, you've got to pay. Now, One thing that we'll work on, we've got tax lawyers in all these countries, we do is help people put the pieces together. So we're the one-stop shop that you want to leave Canada, go to the UAE but have a company over here. We help people figure that out. And we have no one particular country that we focus on. So you're getting objective advice from us rather than if you just go to a lawyer in some country, they just want to tell you their country. So what we would go through is and say, okay, maybe we can delay when that payment is due, because if you leave on a certain date, there's things you can do to maybe push it back legally. But you are going to have to pay, in most cases, on that $14,000 whether you sell or not. And if you don't have other assets, you're going to have to sell part of it, which means if you believe that your Bitcoin is going to go from 30 to 60, you're now not only paying the tax to leave, but you're also selling something that would eventually double in value, so you're basically paying more. So let's just work that out. Let's say you bought 100 Bitcoin back in January for $16,000 each. You paid $1.6 million. That's your cost basis, is the $1.6 million. Now they're worth, let's call it $3 million. So you want to leave your country. You've got a $1.4 million unrealized capital gain. That's also a short-term capital gain, which in some countries makes a difference. So let's say the tax rate is 30%, just to throw out a kind of a random number that may apply to some countries. You owe them $420,000. Now, every country is different. I'm not going to go into all the machinations of each one. That's why we help people personally. But that may be due in a very short period of time. It may be due in a year, right? But eventually you need to have that $420,000. And obviously, my preference is for you to be risk averse and to make sure you have the money. You don't want Bitcoin to go back down just the moment you need to pay. So you'll work that out. But $420,000, and again, if Bitcoin were to double again, that $420,000 slice is now $840,000 of lost potential profit. This is the moment right now for a lot of people who got in, let's say 2021, maybe earlier 2021, where prices are kind of coming back to where they were. If you think prices are going to keep going up, if you're even right now where you got in, now you can leave scot-free. But if prices keep going up, you're going to have to start paying more and more and more with every day that they go up and with every dollar they go up. Again, if you already bought the dip, you're already in that situation, okay? And so you just need to take the pain. But the question is, do you believe things will go further up? Sometimes the people don't want to pay the $420,000 now, so they wait around thinking that somehow when Bitcoin is, $100,000, right? Now your Bitcoin is worth, what would that be, $10 million, right? Oh, somehow then I'll feel good paying $3 million? Wait a second. Sometimes it's better just to leave now and pay a little something and take the pain and just know that going forward, you're going to be out of the system. Because if you leave, let's say Canada today, you're going to pay for whatever you did in Canada up until you leave. But after that, if you go to a place where you're not taxed, everything after that is yours to keep. Now you can choose a place to say, hey, listen, I want to go to the country with a 5% tax rate because I like the lifestyle better. There are European countries where maybe you pay a flat rate, or maybe you pay only on the money that you bring into the country. It's such a new thing that many countries haven't adapted, and you have your own kind of list of countries that entrepreneurs, for example, it's a different list. But you could potentially live in a place where, hey, it's worth me paying $100,000 a year, or it's worth me paying, 3%. You can do that, or you could just move to somewhere where the tax rate is zero, or where the tax rate is, you're only taxed on foreign earnings. Maybe you've got to put your crypto in a company structure in order to do that. So there's many different strategies that you can do to open up many different kinds of countries. You don't just have to move to Dubai. It's not like that's the only option. That's one option, but there's many other options in Europe, Asia, Latin America, where you can pay either a little something or you can structure it to pay zero. But once that structuring is done, you can enjoy as much of the profit as you want to keep based on where you're willing to go. But the question is, when are you going to make that move? And if you live in a country where you've got to become what's called tax non-resident, you can't just do that tomorrow. There's steps that you need to go through. There's things you need to close down. There's changes you need to make. Most people just think, oh, I just leave my country and then they just go away. That's not how it works, and certainly not now. I mean, it hasn't been for a number of years. It may have been 25 years ago. There's a lot of misconceptions out there. You're going to have to spend the majority of your time outside of that country, right? You can't just go and spend half your time there, the 183-day rule. Doesn't work. You need the help that Nomad Capitalist provides to help you figure out, how do I get out of my country, and then where am I going to go from all the dozens of options available? How do I structure my crypto if I need a structure? How to make sure I'm out of both systems, and then I can enjoy the gains for free. Why I'm telling you this now is we got so many calls during the run-up in 2021 from people who say, I'm gonna do it tomorrow. I understand that it's easier for all of us to spend money when things are going well, but I've been telling you since the crypto crash in early 2018, I've been saying the time to move is when the chips are down. Because again, if you've got a capital loss on paper, you don't owe anything in exit tax. If you're even, you don't owe anything in exit tax. And I'll take this one step further. If you are a US citizen and you're willing to invest in a second citizenship, or you're entitled to one through your family tree or whatever, or you already have one, but if you're an American who says, you know what, I don't want to be American anymore, well, you want to have your second passport ready to go sooner than later, because these things all take time. Getting a second passport takes time. Getting an appointment to leave the US takes time. But if you have under $2 million in assets, so long as you haven't had huge income tax bills, and so long as you've been filing your taxes and you've been in compliance, if you're under $2 million, you can actually take advantage of keeping some of those gains. But once you get over $2 million, now you've got a problem. So that's a big number for Americans to keep in mind. And again, this applies to stocks too, right? You can earn capital gains in most stock markets around the world and not pay tax living in Dubai. Dividends are a different story, but capital gains, you can do that. So if you've got stocks that are going up, Bitcoin, HEX, whatever you have, we've helped people from all those walks of life figure out how they can legally move. But you want to be talking about it before the big run-up happens, because if you're calling anybody and say, get me out tomorrow, it's just not going to work that way. It'll also take away some of your strategic options where you may not be able to delay something. Let's say maybe if you delay it a month, you actually have more time to pay because of the way that the tax dates are, especially with something like crypto that is more volatile in terms of where the prices are. Who knows if even a month from now, by the time you're finally able to get moved out, maybe things are 10% higher, and that triggers a higher level of exit tax, or an exit tax at all, or at the very least you have to pay more. Take advantage of the fact that things are slower. Many of you bought in at the levels that we're at now, again, back a couple of years ago. Get your cost basis in order. Determine if you want to save taxes. If you don't care, you just love paying tax, that's fine. You probably get into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency because you're like, the government is not your friend. They don't provide that much value for you. Certainly if you're paying millions in taxes, you don't get your money's worth on that. And so if you can find one of the dozens of places to move that we help people move to, that now would be the time to do it. Don't wait until new all-time highs and think you'll somehow be comfortable paying the bill, because I've seen people, hey, they call you when it's an all-time high, I'm ready to go, here's what you gotta do. Oh my God, no, I can't pay the $2 million, I just can't do it, I'm sorry. And then they stay, and then they just lose their chance. Take the opportunity to do it, and we'd be happy to help you at nomadcapitalist.com.